Welcome to the Success Fundamentals Podcast, where we will be interviewing people who have reached greatness in their respective fields and get an insider's view on what it takes to get to the top. Our aim is to uncover their deepest motivations, beliefs, and methods to achieving success so we can all gain wisdom from their experiences. Please welcome your hosts, Christopher Sykes and Brian Goldsack.
Welcome to another edition of Success Fundamentals, where we give you the tools necessary to be successful in your own lives by people who have already done it. I am your co-host, Chris Sykes.
I'm Brian Goldsack.
And today we have a very special guest by the name of Victoria Peltier. Just want to give you a brief summary of what she's done so far, which is impressive to me, to say the least. She is a corporate executive who has worked for companies like American Express and IBM. She is an official member and contributor to the Forbes Human Resources Council, and she is a contributing author to the book Unstoppable, which is a #1 bestseller on Amazon. Victoria, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So, looking at, all of your successes in your career, it had to start somewhere. So can you take us back to the beginning, where you're from and where this drive and determination came from?
Sure. Well, first of all, I don't think you have enough time for me to take you all the way back, but I'll give you a little bit of the snippet. So, the original plan, quite frankly, was to be a lawyer. I think I spent probably too much time with my mother watching LA Law as a child. But I ended up in the world of corporate business, sort of by happenstance. I worked while I was in university for a bank and ended up loving the work that I was doing. And so a big part of the career advice I give to those who ask or those who don't is to follow your passion and the things that you love doing. But you asked me to also tell you a little bit about where the drive comes from. And I think that it's really important in understanding what motivates and drives others. A big part of the reason I spend a lot of time trying to get to understand people, their circumstance, and their experience. For me, I come from a very, very difficult early beginning, being born to a drug-addicted teenage mother who beat me severely. I went in and out of care a number of times, and I was one of the fortunate ones who was adopted and removed into a safe and loving home by parents who cared and loved for me deeply. But that experience is what has driven me forward. It is why I live this unstoppable life. I chose to take a path to be very different from the experience that I was born into.
I love that. I know it's a snippet in your book that I really want to kind of dive deep into. And I would love to hear your perspective on this. You said in your chapter, The Courage to Live, you don't have to possess a golden pedigree to be unstoppable. In your opinion, the key to being unstoppable is to leverage the lessons and calluses we acquire and the craziness, using them to fuel our desire to learn, to earn, to lead, and to make our marks on the world. Walk us through that quote.
As I said, I think that our experiences inform and influence how we choose to live, to work, to contribute and be. And so the calluses or the scars, literally and figuratively, that I've experienced are, again, what's chosen or have been a choice for me in terms of what I've chosen to learn, how I choose to lead and be as an individual in business, in the community, as a parent. And so I think it's an opportunity for others to embrace that which has made them unique, even if they happen to be incredibly difficult circumstances.
Victoria, do you have any mantras that you live by? Do you have any kind of sayings that echo in your mind that keep this drive at all times?
I do. I have one that I will tell you my children hate when I use it with them, and that is no excuses. And the reason that's become this mantra for me, and I sign a lot of my social media, #no excuses, is because I believe it is about choice, how you choose to react or respond to the circumstances that arise. That doesn't mean that there aren't tears shed and deep emotions felt, but how you choose to move from there is a choice. And so the mantra of no excuses, whether it's, you stumble, you fail miserably, but you have a choice to pick yourself back up and to move forward. There's going to be obstacles that come in your way in terms of maybe career aspirations that you have for yourself. You have a choice to learn what is necessary to achieve skills or experience to go after what you want. You have a choice. I've had many failings in terms of my career, my role as a leader at times. And I've had a choice to learn to do things differently. So that mantra of no excuses is one that I embrace fully for myself and for others that I choose to engage with.
It's when I hear your story and hear you talk about your story, I resonate a lot with it because my childhood wasn't the greatest either. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and it was tough. And as you know, Victoria, you can go down two roads, right? There's this road that you look at and the sign says, it doesn't have to be like this. You can change your life, so you don't have to go back to experiences the trauma that you went through as a child. Or some people take the road of, this is just what life is. I'm just going to, whatever happens. They have no care in the world. For me, what made me realize that I can change myself was a different environment when I moved with my father, who, taught me how to be a man and take responsibility. And then I went on like this self-help journey. I started with these success magazines, and just started to like read, that you can do it. It doesn't matter where you come from. And that kind of helped me spark on this lifelong journey of kind of trying to improve myself. So with you going through what you went through, what made you take the road to the right as opposed to the road to the left?
I think, Chris, it was a few things for myself. First was, I think reflecting and looking back at my biological roots, I was determined to be nothing like my biological mother and the experiences that I had. One, although related to that, my mother and my mom and my dad are my adoptive parents. And I believe that family are those that raise you. And
absolutely
by choice in this circumstance. And I remember my mom saying to me, I don't know, I was probably like 10 or 11 years old, saying, Tori, you need to do better than us. And that's because they took me out of this situation with not a lot of money, but great love. My dad was a school janitor. My mom was secretary. And so doing better than them was the socioeconomic status that they thought meant something, the inability to go on vacations and things like that. I don't think she had to utter those words to me, that I needed to be better than them. Mm-hmm. That wasn't it. I was determined in taking that path to the right to do and be better than the circumstances I was born into, and maybe those from a socioeconomic perspective I was raised in. But it was also because, full transparency, I feared rejection, right? So my early years of the experiences with my mom, and my biological mother, I should say, Julie, she, the last words I heard her utter while I was in her care was actually to my mom who adopted me. My mom ended up taking me a number of times from her when she'd have an episode, and she said, "Come and get her before I kill her." Those were the last words Julie said. And I lived with this fear. I mean, I was rejected. I had my biological mother who abused me, beat me, gave me up multiple times. I went into care and back it out. But that I was always fearful that my parents would reject me if my biological mother could do it and treat me that way. Mm-hmm. That informed in me this fear that I was going to prove to the world that I was better than those circumstances. And the one thing that I knew I did exceptionally well, I was talented in school. I, skipped a couple of grades. So I was fortunate that way. I began working at a very, very young age and I excelled. And so I leaned heavily into those things. So I chose work and how I performed there as the way that I was going to prove my value to the world. It wasn't until much, much later, as I got more comfortable in my own skin and felt less of that fear, that I did it because I enjoyed the work. But quite frankly, that was what steered me down one path to be nothing like the roots and the experience that I came from.
So, Victoria, you began traveling that path. Work was the train or engine, so to speak, to drive you down that path. When you first started going down that path, what did you think was at the end of that path? And has that changed now that you have achieved success? So what did you originally think, and now what do you think?
I don't know that there was an end goal per se in mind. Not that I haven't had many, many goals from a career objective. When I chose that path around proving to others my value, my worth, and doing that very much from a corporate and career perspective, it meant I was achieving success as the organizations and the leaders I work for defined it. So sales or revenue in the company, profitability, being able to make the really difficult decisions. I've been a part of 18 merger acquisitions or related transactions and being a bit of the turnaround queen in taking action. So it was always delivering, quite frankly. That was the goal and objective. I did set others for myself in terms of, I wanted to make the top 40 under 40, which I'm originally from Canada, and they stopped it for a few years before I turned 40 and then reinitiated it after I was 40. So that's a big X. I didn't get the check mark for that one.
You would have.
Thank you. I wanted to be CEO of an organization before I turned 40. That one I did achieve. But then on the flip side, I'll talk about from a success perspective, I also measured a lot by the physical things I had. It was a bit of trying to achieve more and again, impressing others with things. Continually. So I, graduating from houses that were larger and larger to vehicles that were more expensive to those things that ultimately I realized they're not what matter. Right. That was me. I know where it stems from. And I was trying to prove my value and worth. And yes, I achieved status in terms of the roles I was in, but also to the rest of the world, I tried to prove that with money. And I had a shift many, many years ago, on that. And it's interesting. I then started to downsize smaller and smaller and smaller because that's not what mattered. My ex passed away from cancer, second bout of cancer 8 years ago. And although we were divorced at the time, we were good friends, and my children lost a parent, and so that also was just a further mind shift for me. I think I'd moved further away from the necessity for things at that point, but it just shifted things in terms of life is short, but also my focus in terms of what value and success looks like for me is very different. It is not. I'm not going to have on my tombstone, the revenue and profit that I bought for the organizations that I've worked for. I want it to be about the impact that I will have on those people that I touch, those constituents that I serve, and impact will be measured by them. Right? Did I raise two good humans in my children? And, good in terms of the good they'll do for the world and the people around them, and success to be defined the way, whatever is success in their eyes. Did I lead people? Did I coach and develop them? Did I deliver value in the relationships and the clients that I served? That for me is how I want my legacy to be around the impact that I had on the community and the world at large.
Victoria, I want to ask you this question because I would love to hear your perspective on this. when it comes to anything that you're trying to be successful at, whether it's business, whether it's sports, or whether it's entertainment, there's, in my view, a level of sacrifice you have to be willing to, take on in order to be great in whatever endeavor you chose to go down or you choose to pursue. Walk us through that concept in terms of sacrifice. Because again, you've achieved, and to me, again, this is me assuming, it seemed like because of your childhood and your upbringing, it seemed like work was therapeutic to you. So you threw yourself into work as more of therapy. Like, I'm just going to put my all into this. It takes my mind off whatever. Right. But then I know in order to achieve success, it's a matter of sacrifice that you have to take into account. So walk us through what that means in order to be, if you want to be a success, the sacrifice that you had to be willing to take on.
You're right. It has come with significant sacrifice and discipline and dedication. I think it was Malcolm Gladwell in one of his books talked about, to be a success, the tipping point book, it's 10,000 hours, right? Whatever it is, Tiger Woods and how many hours he had to, put in from a golf perspective, et cetera. And so for me, it has been a choice. It's been extreme discipline. So I spent 220 days on the road 1 year traveling for business. I did that when my daughter was not quite 3 years old. And so it meant I had to make a choice to deliver and do what was necessary from a work perspective. That said, the choice in terms of when I was home and in terms of how I engaged with my family was something else. I'm an extreme fitness fanatic. And so discipline means, sadly, I go to bed at earlier than my children. I go to bed at, let's say 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night, because I get up early to work out every morning before my workday starts. Mm-hmm. And so again, there's significant discipline and performance that needs to come. And again, it's a choice that you make. And a lot of people ask me sometimes, how do you do it all? And one of my other sort of sayings is, where there is conviction, there's capacity. So again, I don't want to hear excuses that you can't do it. There's, even for those who have want to have a side hustle or a passion project, there's the 9 to 5 for which that, pays your bills, but then there's the 5 to 9. What are you doing with those hours?
Absolutely.
So Victoria, we've been increasingly asking more of our guests the following 2 questions, and we leave these questions intentionally vague in order for our guests to kind of dive in deep on these 2 subjects. So the first question is, what is your perception of money? And the second question is, what is your perception of power?
My perception of money. It's funny. I remember my mom had this thing. She said, money doesn't buy happiness, but it makes one hell of a down payment.
I love it.
Yeah. So
there's the clip for the internet. There it is.
That's right. I've had a very this vacillating kind of experience and view on money. As I said earlier, I had a drive to earn more and more. I made my first million well before I was 30, and it was about having more and more and more. But at the same time, I sort of flipped. I also talked about the things that are much more valuable. So I will tell you, when I chose to divorce my ex, I was 13 years younger, and a few months after we separated, I learned that my ex's cancer had returned. So I walked away from everything. All the, it's 50-50 in terms of what I could have left from an asset perspective. I walked away with $80,000, which was all my ex could come up with by borrowing from my mother-in-law out of one of our homes, our matrimonial home. So I started over at 33 with $80,000 in my pocket. And I did that for a number of reasons, because again, money isn't buying happiness, and it can't buy health. It can buy good health care, but it can't buy the health of their circumstance. So for me, I have this weird view of money, and yes, it's afforded me the ability to, pay for my son's college. Although I tell him he needs to maintain a B average or above, or I don't pay, right? So it's afforded the things that I didn't have as a child. And so I continue to work hard to have it. And not that I have no plans on retirement. My husband jokes that don't ever call our home. We just bought a new house. And I said, I mistakenly called it my retirement home at one point. And he says, like, don't kid yourself. He's like, you're never retiring. Let's just call it our forever home. And so I want to leave enough money for me to be able to, again, give my children what they need and more. But it's really not everything. So I've had this very changing or evolving view over what money means to me, to my life, and success, health, and happiness. The second one around power, that one's interesting for me. I mean, I think power means many, many different things. Is it power? Is it influence? I've had a lot of people will ask me, do I have mentors or people that I've looked at up to? And power comes into play here, because the reality is, I will actually say I haven't had a formal mentor per se. Not that there aren't people in my career and path that I look up to and I'm like, oh, they've done that really well, and there's some things that I want to learn from. Rather, I've actually experienced leaders that I've realized they're what I want to become nothing like. And oftentimes it's because of how they treated the power that they had, right? So a title, can give a hierarchical view of power and, again, influence and decision-making capabilities within organizations. But how they choose to utilize that, again, for good, for bad, to influence, to drive towards the values that one has, is much more critically important. So, again, naturally, I think a hierarchy comes with power, but it doesn't mean it's always the right kind. And so for me, I'm radically candid in business and in life, and I have zero problems challenging those in positions of power. Because I care about progressing things forward, because I have an opinion, because I have experience. Now, at some point, there's people at more senior roles than me that ultimately get to make a decision. But again, I want us to all feel comfortable in leaning into the power that we have. And that power oftentimes is our voice.
Absolutely. I love that because, like you just said, people can use power for good. People can use power for bad. And some people can get drunk with power that they become, delusional about who they are. Quite frankly, to shift gears, right? I know people are going to listen to this and be extremely motivated. So I have, and inspired by you. I'm inspired by you. But I want to kind of get your take. This is two questions. One, what does success in general mean to you? And since this is the Success Fundamentals podcast, what are the fundamentals to someone? What are the fundamentals to success for someone to experience success in their own lives?
So I've had this conversation. It's actually, I'll say with my son, but it's how I kind of reflect, on things. And I think I said earlier around, that I want that success should be defined in the eyes of what you as an individual want, and I say that because my son said to me, I think he was a teenager, and I remember he's 21 now, and I was pushing him really hard because in Canada we don't have SATs, and so the grade 11 year, the marks are used when you're applying for college or university. And I was pushing him really hard, and he said to me, and we did have a nice home at that time, and he kind of pointed around, and he's like, "Mom, I don't need all of this. I am fine with mediocrity." So I have to tell you that pained me a little bit after like working so hard and being so driven. And then again, recently we're having a conversation. He's about to graduate in computer engineering. So he's really sad that Mom just decided to leave IBM. But I had the conversation with him and I said, we were talking about networking and then setting up his LinkedIn profile and all these sorts of things. And I said, "Look, buddy," I said, "I can help open doors for you, but I'm not going to get the job for you." And I said, "If you want to leverage," I was just named the 50 most influential business leaders in tech, for example. Thank you. And so I told him, I said, "Recognize that, your mom can help in some of these things." And again, he said to me, he's like, "Mom," he said, "like, I'm really happy for you. I'm proud that you did that." He said, "But I just want you to know," he said, "I don't want that." He said, "I just want to get married and I want to have kids and I want to have a dog and just lead a simple life." And that'll almost make me tear up a little bit as he said that, but that's for my son. That's his definition of success. He doesn't want the big house. He doesn't want excess, but he also doesn't want to work the kind of hours. That's the other thing that he's seen me work over the years. Right? Like that. He said, "That is not for me." He said, "You work 60, 80 hours a week." He's like, that's not what I want. So I'd say, Chris, that, success is how and what you define for yourself. I'd say some of those fundamentals, however, are, this whole notion of, work to live, live to work. Like you need to get up and enjoy doing whatever it is that you're going to do every day. And for me, that's the 80-20 rule. Like, let's recognize there's going to be 20% of our days of doing stuff, administration or whatever, that we don't necessarily love. Mm-hmm. But that other 80% of the time, love what you do. Life is far too short. So do something that you enjoy, for the lifestyle. Ideally, it aligns. My daughter, on the other hand, total opposite to my son, where, she said to me, so she just turned 17. And as she thinks about her next step from post-secondary education standpoint, she said, "Mom, what do you think I should do?" And I said, "Well," I'm like, "Beauty, I can see you doing a couple of things. You're really good." She's been working with special needs kids and babysitting. And so I said, I could see you going down that career path, but you can also sell ice to Eskimos. So I could see you going into sales. And she said, "Well, which one makes more money?" Right? So I said, "Well, I could actually tell you that, but again, I'm going to go back to, you need to do what you're going to be excited and passionate about, but ideally, with money that comes along with the type of lifestyle that you want to lead. And they're not always synonymous. So again, there's choices and trade-offs that you're going to make. So I think it means reflecting pretty deeply on what you enjoy and what you want, what success is for you.
It's funny you say that, because Jeff Bezos said exactly what you said in terms of finding the 80-20. He said, because yes, I love Amazon, but there's a lot of things about being a CEO and, that I don't like. The admin stuff. I'm the same way. Brian and I run our own practices. We hate the admin stuff. I know I do. I can't stand the admin stuff. But the majority of what I do, I love. And you said that is perfect, because in this world, you hear all the time, you hear, well, if you don't have a passion for everything, then you can't be successful, or, you can't get any sleep and the things of that nature. Now, I do agree with you, Victoria, when it comes to I think being fit and healthy is a huge part of being successful. I'm the same way. I'm a health nut. I work out every morning before work, 5 days a week. You may do 7 days. I do 5.
6.
So you get impressive again. Do you hear that, people? She works 80 hours a week and then has the time to work out 6 days a week. All right. This is who we're dealing with. But anyways, I think that's very, very true. Brian, what do you think?
I think so. Increasingly, the more people we interview on the show, I see that whole mind, body, spirit dynamic kind of in everybody. So it always seems like the mind is taken care of through their work. Almost every single one of the people we've interviewed have some emphasis on staying fit, healthy, eating well. And then the whole spirit component, we don't touch on that too much, but it does seem like family provides a lot of joy and motivation for people. And it seems like it's all part of a complete package of success. Victoria, I'd be curious to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, Brian, I do think it is when you say the complete package. For me, it's life. I don't like to separate. A lot of people want to draw this line between what they do professionally and then what happens personally. It's all life, and it's integrated. And as we're staring into one another's homes, as we're on, Zoom or WebEx calls now, much more so. So recognizing that, the confluence of events have brought everything together in a much more connected way than it was before, when we had to physically leave our homes to go to the workspace. So I do think that we should be just looking at this integrated whole life and experience. And that is, as you said, it's health, it's, our careers, it's what we choose to do. Not everyone chooses to have family or children, but there's those family, family, and sometimes those are friends that they choose around, and those experiences. So it's finding a way to integrate them all together in, a healthy way for oneself to be successful.
Well said. Well said.
So Victoria, as we come to the conclusion, as we begin to wrap up, let's just say someone's listening and says, you know what, I want to follow down with 2 things for you, and said, I want to follow in Victoria's footsteps. She's so inspirational. I want her to be my virtual mentor by way of this show. What career advice would you give them?
So a few things. So we talked about following your passion. And by the way, I just want to state one thing. We all have bills to pay. So sometimes you actually might be difficult to follow your passion. And that's when you have side hustles and you work towards it. So recognize that we can't all do it immediately, but to the extent that you can, follow your passion. The next, and we talked about discipline, is the need to perform. And so that means developing the skills, the education, the experience to be successful. And then there's other elements as well, which are around your personal brand. So I spent a lot of time. In fact, yesterday I was, delivering a session to a bunch of new interns at an organization and talking to them about the importance of investing now in your brand. It's not just the subject matter expertise for which you are known. It is that whole person. Again, what do you want people to know that differentiates you from others? I spent my career in business to business. So people do business with people they like and they trust and they want to do business with. So make sure to curate and invest time in your brand. And then also relationships matter, right? So the, networking and who you choose to build authentic relationships with, and doing it from a place of care and without an expectation for immediate reciprocity. Again, it will come, karma. So I invest a lot of time in people for no other reason than I care about the individuals and I want them to be successful, but it's also a very, very small world.
Absolutely. And where can people find you? Can
find me at victoria-peltier.com. or certainly look me up on LinkedIn.
And Victoria, what is the bottom line of success?
The bottom line of success. You define success. You have choice, and you can be unstoppable.
I love that. I love that.
Wow.
I love
There's a
that.
lot of things that can be great clips. And that's another one. Okay?
We have like 23 clips we can use to kind of. We have to
You got a
figure.
big buffet on this one. Yeah.
I'm telling you. Well, listen, Victoria, thank you again for spending your precious time with us. In the amount of time that we spent together, I've learned a lot about you. I've learned a lot about you. Oh, wait, I want to ask this question before we wrap up. What is important to you now? I mean, you're successful and you're doing all these things. What's important to you now? Like, what are you trying to achieve?
So I talked about having impact, and so that's really important to me. And so I was asked a question recently over like, what is the pandemic taught me anything? And I said it's taught me two things. One, I made the right choice in marrying my husband, because after spending 24/7 together for a long time, I still want to spend time with him. That's good. But the second is that values, integrity, connected to the purpose I have and the legacy and the impact, that's way, way more important to me now. It always was, but fundamentally, life is too short for me to do and be engaged in situations that don't bring me joy. So again, not that the 20% of stuff that don't bring me joy, I don't still have to do, but for that 80%, I feel like I'm delivering value and impact to clients, to my teams, to my family, to my friends.
I love that.
Awesome.
That's clip
Awesome.
number 24.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you, Victoria.
thank you so much, Victoria. Again, I can't believe we got you on the show. So this is fantastic. Again, you inspire me. I'm pretty sure you inspired our audience. Thank you again for spending precious time with us. That is it for this episode of Success Fundamentals. If you like this show, please subscribe, and we will see you next week. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Success Fundamentals podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review.